Hello and welcome everyone. This is Type V3 with another Code Geass Robot Spirits review for the Nightmare Frame Guren Mark II, otherwise known as the Order of the Black Knights Ace in the Hole. With its simplistic asymmetrical design, it should be no surprise that the Guren Mark II is an eye-catching action figure. To say it's pretty would be debatable, but striking? Definitely. Its few details are present, and all the panel lines are sharp. The proportions are also correct, despite coming off as a little strange to those unfamiliar with the design. Moreover, the paint scheme is equally as simplistic. For starters, almost none of the figure is painted. Instead, the majority of the Guren carries a thin, glossy clear coat that highlights the natural vibrancy of the plastic. It's a small detail that I wish more figures would take on. As for actual paint apps, the entirety of the figure's right arm is covered in a beautiful silver flake finish, and its palm is a mesmerizing metallic red dot, the Radiant Wave Surger. Of course, the Guren Mark II has its share of faults as well. The lower sections of the legs carry a lot of molded in detail that I feel could have been brought out more with additions of simple shading. The rear of the torso just under the cockpit appears a tad hollow too, though I'm not sure if this is in line with the on-screen model. There's also a minor presence of mold flash, and just like her main rival, the Lancelot, the Guren is relatively small at 5 inches tall, though I suppose the bulk of her frame somewhat makes up for that. Let's see how the Guren moves. There is the same ball-jointed head that was found on the Lancelot. It's on the same base hinge there. The shoulders are neat. They're on the stem ball joint that goes in and out. But you can tell right here that they just pull out ever so slightly to do that shoulder extension, so that's really neat. The arms are different, so I'll go through them one at a time. There is a swivel at the top here, double-jointed elbow, ball-jointed wrist. And that's basically it. I mean, there is also a swivel at the forearm, but yeah. The other arm, again, bicep swivel. And because this is the Radiant Wave arm, it has a bit more articulation. First of all, that elbow is a joint, but it also extends. And then as you just saw, the forearm extends once more. Each of these fingers are on their own little ball joints, and the hand can swivel and it has a hinge. So in the end, you can get a pretty long extension out of that arm. There is a ball joint at the top of the torso and at the waist, so you can kind of do that. Ball jointed hips on a stem so they go up and down. There's also a thigh swivel there, but because of this rubber elastic design piece, you can't really use the thigh swivels all too much. They do get sort of hindered there. Double jointed knees, and the ankles have their own little tilt and swivel, and these two heel spurs are separate, so you can pose them separately, and you wouldn't believe how useful they come in on really dynamic poses. She also has her rollerblade things that come out here, and they can sort of swivel a little bit to accommodate for certain poses, and this cockpit can pop off. Now, even though it looks like there's a line there for this to open, it actually can't, which, again, I don't really mind since you don't get a small pilot of Cullen. And that's really all there is to the articulation and feature set of the Guren Mark II. Is it as complex as the Lancelot over there? Not at all. But that actually works in this figure's favor because, I'll tell you, without all the multitude of panels and the extreme articulation, the figure as a whole feels solid. The joints, they feel smooth. And it's much more in line with other Bandai products. And I really like that about this figure. It just feels like this solid toy that I have no problems. Like, I don't feel like if I were to bend this elbow too much, it would snap. It just feels great in hand, and I'm really happy about that. Also, this hand, if you have, for all you Gundam fans out there, if you have never seen Code Geass and you think this hand reminds you of G Gundam or Shining Gundam's Shining Finger, I recommend you check out who pilots this robot, and you will be heavily surprised at what you may find. The Guren Mark II comes with a total of 4 hands, solely for her left arm. There's a fist, an open palm, and a dynamic hand too, which are all great for multiple poses. Though if I'm honest, I would have been just as happy if none of these hands were included, since all she needs is her one gripping hand and the fork knife. Sure, it may not be the most extravagant of accessories, but just having this weapon in Guren's hand completes the look. The only other accessory included is Guren's single Harken. It's connected on a malleable metal rod and attaches to the figure's left chest plate. It's easy, effective, and that's really it. When the Guren Mark II first appeared on Code Geass, I was instantly seduced by its charm. The want for an eventual plastic representation wasn't surprising, however I did come to terms with the fact that it may not actually make for the best of toys. After all, it never sported a huge amount of extra armaments, and compared to the other Nightmare frames, the Guren is one of the most basic in design. Yet, this Robot Spirits release has proved me wrong. What's presented here is a solid action figure. The combination of a striking appearance and simple construction worked out well for the Guren Mark II. Sure, many other figures have great articulation, still I never felt like the Guren was lacking or hindered in any way. Instead of packing her with a huge accessory count, Bandai decided to work on refining the build quality of the core toy, and it shows. On the other hand, at $35, I think this one's a tad overpriced, but I still recommend it if you've got the slightest of interests. Ultimately, Robot Spirit's Guren Mark II is an action figure who's honest up front and never attempts to surprise you, but at the same time, she never disappoints. Anyways, this has been Type V3. Thanks for watching, and while this may be the end of my look into Nightmare frames, coverage of Code Geass is far from over.